We've got in about 60 people in. We're still about 40 short from registration. I'm Craig Lesurf. I'm president of Gillam Group, and I'm also chair of the League of Champions. And we're today happy to present to you a session on mental health, and it's supporting employees and mental health during COVID-19. You know, we're in unprecedented times, and we've had to make a few changes in how we're doing day-to-day business and how we're living as a people across the globe. And obviously one of the ways we can reach out in greater numbers is to do webinars. And the League of Champions is an organization that was founded on supporting good companies and understanding safety culture. You can tell by the jerseys that we wear, they're very distinctive. It was created as a symbol, and the idea behind the jersey is that it's a symbol. It's a symbol to rally around so that we can all look at safety at large, and use it as a safety culture sort of lightning rod. And in this case, what we do is we gather signatures and we get people to commit to work safe, to make sure everybody beside them works safe, and that everybody goes home safe at the end of the day. And as you can see on my jersey, I got a couple thousand, maybe about 10, I guess, thousand signatures of people committing. And when you sign your family name, it's usually a commitment on a contract. And in this case, it's about working safe. And to that end, we thought we'd do is bring you some speakers. We have a couple great speakers today in Julian Toy and in Katia Corman. So we're hopeful that, Camcar, that we're hopeful that you're going to get something out of today. It's big time stress in the industry, and I think it's something we all need to talk about. It's something that mental health is not talked about enough. It's something that we all need to participate and encourage everyone else to come forward so we can talk about it. So with that, I wanted to turn it over first to David Frame, OGCA Director of Government Relations.
Thank you, Craig. Just want to remind everybody too,
Dave, hold on, you're in mute.
Well, we're focused on,
Dave.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yep,
yeah,
okay.
you're coming through.
Okay, well, we're focused on COVID these days.
Dave, you're still...
that we're working on, and one of them
Again,
is...
we've lost your sound, Dave. Okay, technical flaw.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'll keep talking. Let me know if you're hearing
So what
me.
we'll do is we'll move past David and see if we can get his... you might have to log back in, Dave.
Hey, Craig. Craig, I can
straight to our first speaker. So we stay in one's time.
Craig,
we
can
all hear him.
Yeah,
we can all hear him, Craig.
Carry on, David. My bad.
Okay, Craig. I'll let you know when I finish. Okay. We've got other things to deal with as well, and the WSIB, Rod Cook and Diana Rea, who are on today, have reminded me that their Health and Safety Excellence Program is up and running. And in fact, you can use these seminars to help you support yourself in the Health and Safety Excellence Program. And so a good example is that one of the programs is workplace health promotion. And you can use our seminar today to develop your own program and to work with your provider to put a program in place. So just want to remind you of that before you go on. If you want to come back and refer to it, of course, this session is being recorded and will be posted in the next couple of hours on the League of Champions website. So I also ask you that at the end of the day, if you also complete the survey, this is the second of a series that we're going to be rolling out to you, and we hope they're helpful. We want your feedback so we can make these very relevant to your day-to-day needs. So Craig, back to you. I'm finished.
I had to unmute myself.
Okay.
I'm not good enough. Here we go. Okay, just 1 second. Sorry, guys. My audio is dialing in, so I was getting feedback loop on myself. So anyways, I wanted to introduce Dr. Katya Kamkar, who's a clinical psychologist at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health with CAMH. She's an assistant professor with the Dean of Psychiatry at University of Toronto. She's the executive director of the Canadian Association of Fire Investigators. She sits on the board of directors for the Badge of Life Canada, Operation Lifesaver Canada, and the Canadian Juries Commission. She's a doctor of the Canadian Psychology Association, CPA, Trauma Sector, and co-chair of the Global Law Enforcement and Public Health Association. I could keep going on because the list goes on for quite a lot, but I'd like to maybe just turn it over and say, Katya, over to you. Katya.
Well, good afternoon to all, and I am absolutely delighted to be here with you, and thank you so very much for having me. And yes, the topic of mental health, it's so important, has always been important, and now more than ever, we have certainly witnessed how with the COVID-19 pandemic, globally, our life has been turned upside down and pretty much shattered. So our daily structure, daily routine, and habits, and of course, it has led to a range of emotions, from a lot of anxiety and fear and sadness, or it could be feelings of anger, to a range of thoughts. So a lot of anxiety and worries, and of course, all valid concerns given tremendous uncertainty going on. And we can also relate COVID with a kind of a grief, and we know that grief works on a continuum from, let's say, people very much saying, I miss, for example, going out and having my coffee and a newspaper and going to my office, to I'm missing the birthday parties or social events with my friends, to, of course, to the other extreme, the death of loved ones and difficult, not being able to attend funerals. So it very much ranges on a continuum. Now, of course, we have received latest updates about surveys that show that more Canadians than not report an increase in mental health concerns. And certainly, if we struggled with any mental health conditions before, it's definitely worsening now. And with a large percentage showing worries, a lot of anxiety, which we understand, very understandable. Some also report boredom, and also some also report the importance of being grateful. We do know through the World Health Organization that any dollar that we invest towards the treatment of common mental health problems, that we do get about $4 return on investment in terms of improved health and improved productivity. So, and that is why more and more employers are proactively searching for ways to very much improve employers' health and safety and minimize psychological risk. Now, of course, more than ever. Prior to the pandemic, we know that the costs associated with mental health problems were within the $51 billion annually. 35% related to mental health disabilities because of absenteeism, presenteeism, short-term and long-term disability, and sick leave. And now, of course, we do need to wait for newer data. Of course, we also know that the costs associated with mental health disabilities are much higher than the costs associated with physical health disabilities because of the high risk of recurrence and the longer duration. So anytime we're talking about occupational health and safety and workplace mental health, we want to intervene at two levels, at the worker individual level as well as at the organizational level. So really here I would like to first of all focus on at the worker individual level, which is applicable to all of us, and it very much with the theme of, yes, this is a pandemic, but in this pandemic we're all together, and really the line is very much blurred about employee and employer, because we have all noticed very much how much our life similarly has been impacted. And we will also talk about some tools and strategies at the organization level. Before that, the fundamental thing that I always like to share is really around the prevention continuum care, because there's a lot of misunderstanding around what prevention is. So prevention is, when we talk about prevention, we're talking about primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. So primary prevention is anything that we do prior to an onset of an illness. And of course, our talk here actually is very much based, which is great, towards primary prevention. So it's really around resiliency, mental health promotion, ways of reducing risk, improving protective factors. So again, boosting our resiliency. Anything that we do should be at the worker, individual level, and organizational level. Secondary prevention is there is an onset of, there's a stressor going on, there is a problem going on, or an onset of an illness, whether it's mental health or physical health. And of course, anything that we do at the primary prevention, we need to continue. But here, maybe there's peer support that might be helpful, maybe any work accommodation, maybe evidence-based treatment that might be helpful. Then there is tertiary prevention. And here the goal in the symptoms here might vary, again, whether it's mental health or physical health, the symptoms might vary from moderate to severe. Then here the goal is to really reduce functional impairment, helping towards return to work, any accommodation, peer support, and of course rehabilitation and evidence-based treatment. Primary prevention, which is a focus of our talk, is most effective when we are working on alongside secondary and tertiary prevention. Now, I want everyone, and I should have mentioned this before, I want everyone to take the paper and pen, please, or your phone, because I really want us to utilize as much skills and strategies that hopefully you will find helpful. So if everyone could find us a paper pen. With this pandemic, it has created a new normal, and we do know that with any return to work, it's going to create another new normal. Whenever we are in any new normal, we do need to create new routine and new structure, and everyone is going to be different. So that means we all need to build our own individualized self-care pathway. New routine, new structure, and that will lead to new projects, new meaningful activities. We have a tendency to judge our sense of self and identity based on our activity. And that is why also the pandemic and the isolation and quarantine has been very difficult, because a lot of people have felt the sense of worthlessness, the sense of I'm weak or I'm useless because I'm not able to do what I was able to do before. But here, by engaging in new activities and appreciating ourselves and what we are able to do, it can hopefully reduce those very much negative feelings. Keeping in touch, so using technology by constantly keeping in touch, seeking support, but also it could be talking about COVID, but also conversations non-COVID related. A lot of people now share about, recipes or the stretching exercises or the apps that they have been engaging. A lot of people now engaging virtual care or cocktail afternoons along with their peers and family that they have found that kind of very, very supportive and very helpful. Creating boundaries between, yes, we do need to be connected to the media, be aware of the updates, and at the same time, boundaries with, okay, now I need to also restore my batteries and engage in other activities. And the boundary that we create is different for everyone, but also there is individual difference as our needs and our tolerance level will vary each day as well. Breathing technique has been found to be very helpful. And breathing technique, there are a variety of instructions how to engage, but it's really around being mindful of our breathing and learning to slow down our breathing. In fact, learning to slow down our breathing has been found to very much also help to reduce the physiological reactions. And especially now it's needed because there's so much stress and anxiety going on. And it's very much around the diaphragm. We want to inhale very slowly, maybe 3 to 4 seconds. We can stop for about maybe 2-3 seconds, and gradually and slowly we exhale for about 4 to 6 seconds. There is also what we call the sensory grounding. So using our senses to be connected to the moment, to the present time. And especially now it's helpful because with anxiety, our mind travels to the future. We tend to catastrophize, overestimate the threat. When we feel depressed and down, our mind tends to travel to the past. A lot of those sad memories kick in. We need to also appreciate and be aware of to be grounded to the moment, to the here and now. So sensory grounding is really around what do I see and hear, my body touches, and the sense of smell and taste to be connected. So do I feel the fresh air touching my face? Can I hear the birds? When I have my coffee, am I able to taste the coffee? Or drink my water, am I able to feel the water? So variety of sensory grounding as well. All of those eventually will lead to what we call psychological growth. And as part of our psychological growth and boosting our resiliency is also now focusing on what do I have control over? What do I have control over? We have a tendency to want to focus on the things that we do not have control over, which also makes sense. These are the very things we want to change, but we do know it's not going to be possible. So it's really around what do I have control over and what are my current worries? And we want to distinguish current worries with potential worries. Potential worries are about future worries that might or might not come true. So right now, for example, we might be worried about what's going to happen in August, what's going to happen in December with my work, where am I going to work? These are important questions, but right now we do need to take care of today and tomorrow and probably the next month before we also might be able to better figure out might happen in December. So it's really around current worries and identifying our positives and practicing gratitude every day. Now, I can go on and on about individual strategies, which I'm going to do part of Q&A, but I want to move on into organizational strategies. And before that, also the importance always of self-compassion, self-kindness, being mindful of our thoughts and emotions, and we want to normalize them and accepting that, yes, we are human and no one is perfect. When it comes to organization, we do know we are talking here about organizational change. During the pandemic, it's an organizational change. With any return to work in any modality, once again, we are talking about organizational change. When we talk about organizational change, during uncertain times, fluid times, is the need for calm, strong, and a trustworthy leadership that is extremely important. Now, there are tons of training and workshops on what is a trustworthy leadership. What I would like to do is to read you only one sentence that really caught my heart, and it's by Brené Brown on trust. And I think that one way or another we can all relate to it. I'm going to read that for you by Brené Brown. It turns out that trust is in fact earned in the smallest of moments. It is earned not through heroic deeds or even highly visible actions, but through paying attention, listening, and gestures of genuine care and connection. That is all about, and especially during this pandemic, that of course it has impacted all of us. Within organizational change, it creates automatically an imbalance between what we call work demand, work control. And that's important for all leaders to know. We do know that one of the most popular and well-researched work stress model to this day is the work demand control model by Karasing in 1979 that to this day continues to be used. And what it has been found is that when the demands are very high and there is poor control, meaning that I have a lot of demands and duties and responsibilities, but my perception of control and resources and skills and support are very low, imbalance, it creates a lot of stress and eventually burnout and can increase the risk for psychological and physical health problems. And a lot of mixed research also in terms of, okay, what is more important, the demand and control? And now with the most newest research, both are equally not only important, but equally distinct contributors to workplace mental health. So that means here is around, we want to ensure that everyone's, as much as possible, the work demands and the roles and responsibilities are clear, and that we are being assigned with the resources and the support and the training and the education that we all need to ensure that we are able to exert the demands. Of course, work-life balance is important now, especially more than ever, because we all have to juggle. It could be children, it could be schooling the children at home, support for the elderly, in addition to tremendous amount of stress for the fear of infection that we all going through on a daily basis. Again, the organizational level, the same skills that I just shared at the individual level, important for all leaders, again, because we're all individuals, we're all human beings to share, because leaders now, those are role models, and we look at them. So the more we are able, they are able to manage the stress. As employees, we are able to see that as well. Sharing information is important. Sharing information with a lot of empathy and also optimism, but true and realistic optimism, showing that yes, there is hope, we are able to have control, and this is the backup, this is what we are able to do. As part of sharing information is validating everyone's fears and concerns, providing hope, and inform the graduated steps. These are the clear steps that we are going to make. Yes, we might make mistakes are going to happen, but these are the steps that we are going to make. So that everything is clear. Credibility, of course, is important. Credibility and trust, as we just talked about. Credibility is also earned towards demonstrating that all the steps have been made throughout consultation, that they're all informed, well-educated, well-informed steps. Being honest and transparent. Transparency also comes with not only sharing good information, good news, but in also sharing difficult news. And the context and circumstances vary, but ideally is whenever we are finding out that yes, there may be errors or mistakes that are done, there are negative news, but to share it as early as it could be possible. Sometimes it's whenever there is a delay that unfortunately credibility and trust might be shaken up. Regular communication also is very helpful, because whenever we go for a prolonged period of time without hearing anything from our leaders, it creates more anxiety, and we all know how we function with more anxiety. We tend to have a lot of negative thoughts and more catastrophic thoughts. So regular information helps to reduce the anxiety and increase reliability as well. In the regular communication, we want to ensure that there is chance for feedback. Sometimes people are comfortable to share their feedback in group, sometimes individually, but as long as everyone feels comfortable sharing their needs, sharing their feedback, any concerns and anxiety in a very comfortable way, that we want to ensure. And of course, I can go on and on, but I'm going to stop it here, and more than happy to answer any of your questions.
So I think I've got my technical guffaw there fixed up. So apologies for that to everyone. And I thought it was David and that you had the volume muted on. Anyways, I got a question from the field, and if you wanted to email me or on through the chat, if you just want to send a note out to all, I'll ask the questions. And what I'll also do is, I have one right now. You can send them to me privately, and I'll ask them on your behalf to keep you anonymously on the list if you don't want to be shown. Do you have some tried true resources that maybe are helpful to drive the mental health? Mental health is a real issue. Message home for employers who still not put any importance on this element of health and productivity?
Thank you for asking about resources. Yes, we do have tons of resources, and I was able to actually share them and provide the list of resources. And within each of those websites, it's going to lead you to tons of other great readings and resources. And it's an ongoing process. So you will see the Center for Addiction and Mental Health, Ontario Psychological Association, Anxiety Canada, a variety of other very large organizations that you will be able to find resources, maybe for your own self-help around COVID-19. But then also what's important, I want people to know, if there is struggle, you can talk to any healthcare professional at any time. So Center for Addiction and Mental Health, Ontario Psychological Association, there is virtual therapy, there is telemedicine, very effective, very important for us to seek help and making sure we do not suffer in silence.
Okay, great. So just we'll have those on the website. We'll make sure everybody gets those resources. Thank you very much. Another question is, what are some of the key tools that workers, employees can use to boost mental health?
So in terms of the key tools, so the ones that I have just shared, so making sure here, the new routine and structure, self-care. You know, we always talk about self-care, but self-care also means self-kindness. I need to be kind to myself. So we need to catch any negative self-talk, our tendency to engage in negative self-labeling, catching those negative self-talk so that we can practice self-kindness. And very much also it provides us the ability to evaluate our negative self-talk and to be able to balance them, balancing our negative thoughts, balancing our emotions, help us to actually make healthier decisions. And that's all part of self-compassion. We also know that eating healthy, exercises have a direct influence on our mood. mood, our mental health, and our physical health. Health is health, whether we were talking about mental health or physical health. And so very much a balanced, healthy diet, engaging in physical exercise, intense workout, it could be at home or outside, maintaining physical distance, and also seeking support so that, yes, there's physical distancing, but social connection can very much be maintained. That's very important for us to keep in mind.
Okay. I got another question from Lisa Tam. In case one of the employees confirmed COVID-19, what would you suggest to the crew working with that person to cope with the concern on COVID-19, and any step-by-step suggestions?
It has impacted everyone very differently. Certainly, we do know that there is isolation, there is quarantine, and sometimes people are also afraid of the stigma. So it can endanger a variety of thoughts and emotions for everyone. For some, it's like a similar reactions, but some it will be different. So always keeping in mind the power of listening, the power of showing empathy, what are the needs, and how can we best help you. And it's going to impact everyone differently. So it's really around right now saying, how can we help you? In very much listening is key. Sometimes we might not know one of the best, the best way of coping, but listening is very much key. So listening and showing empathy and asking, what can we do right now to help you?
Okay, excellent. Why is self-compassion so important?
Self-compassion for all of, the best way we can provide help to others is when we are able to help ourselves. If we struggle with burnout, burnout is associated with exhaustion, apathy, cynicism. We don't want to do anything for ourselves. And it's not only burnout shuts ourselves down with ourselves, but ultimately it's going to shut you with others. So the best way we can help others and be open is the kindness, is the love and support with ourselves. And here comes in self-compassion. And self-compassion especially kicks in during difficult times. It's the relation that we have with ourselves during times that we struggle the most. It's the relation with ourselves when we suffer, whenever we are in pain. And there are three main components. Is the mindfulness, which is I need to be able to identify my range of thoughts and emotions so that I do not overly identify with them. The more I'm able to take an objective sense from my thoughts and emotions, I'm able to reframe them. I'm able to balance them. I'm able to come up with a healthier interpretation and engage in healthier decisions. And that's ultimately what is psychological flexibility. When reality changes, we need to change our expectations and interpretations so we are able to better problem solve. So flexibility is key to our recovery and always boosting our resiliency. Second component is self-kindness, as we just talked about. And the third component is humanity. We're all human beings. No one is perfect. And the more we are able to practice humanity, it helps to reduce actual self-isolation.
Okay, great. That's excellent. Do you know of some strategies that we can use to encourage virtual connect and avoid social isolation, besides the Zoom call we're all on right now?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I bet you know more than me. I can tell you that. I sent a tweet the other day, and I said that throughout this COVID-19 pandemic, every single person should be issued a certificate of graduation in technology, whatever technology and whatever a grades, literally. And so there are tons of apps right now. I would say that's why also we need to keep in touch. Ask everyone around throughout the variety of apps people are engaging in, through like connecting virtually. But then also I hear people like now are doing yoga or doing dancing classes or cooking classes, a lot of free apps going out. And yes, there is Zoom, there is a WebEx, there are a variety of apps, there is FaceTime, there is Skype. Generally one thing leads to another. But I think that if you check reliable websites to say, what are some of the good apps now to COVID-19 and to engage in virtual meeting, then you're going to find a lot of information. But ask around as well, and maybe you can let me know.
That was great. I mean, I know I did one myself there the other week. I normally go away on a annual trip with a bunch of buddies and their sons, and we do ATVing, and we couldn't do it. It got canceled this year. And so we actually got a whole bunch of us on a call and on a Friday night and spend a couple hours talking, joking, laughing, have a couple beers, and we all sat in our virtual garages, quote unquote. And I thought it was a good way of connecting.
That is a great example, Craig. Totally. I agree with you. And I heard similar of that too. I agree.
Another question here. How can we best optimize work-life balance to help increase productivity?
Okay, I love that question because, prior to the pandemic, a lot of my talks were really around the work-life balance. So let me tell you something. First of all, I never liked the word balance. I think it's very misleading. What is balance anyway? So balance is not, before the pandemic, let me see. So balance is not 50-50. 50% work, 50% our personal life. Balance is really around, you need to create your own individualized recipe to know what is best work for you so that you can optimize your productivity. But optimizing productivity means also I need to optimize my health, kind of juggling everything. Create your recipe. It could be 5% here, 10% here, 15% I'm going to devote here. You need to create a percentage in everything here, a recipe that works so that you maintain a sense of fulfillment and efficiency, productivity in your life. Then there is a balance. If you feel good, there is a productivity, you can contribute to the society, you feel okay at work. Then Now, of course, any recipe that you create, flexibility again is important because our day can change suddenly tomorrow, which we have noticed. But then also it could be that there are other priorities, other stresses in our life that can come in any time. So sometimes it could be a little change, or sometimes it could be a big change to our recipe we need to engage in. Here, of course, with the pandemic, working from home, people can go from the lot of multiple responsibilities to engaging to others to say, look, I'm really bored. I need to figure out what to do. For the people who need to engage in all responsibilities, prioritizing responsibilities is very important. So I need to prioritize. I need to make a to-do list. I need to prioritize responsibilities. If new responsibilities come in, you need to reprioritize, delegate tasks. Self-care is important. There was a cartoon that I found very funny. There was a little child who opened the door of the closet and said, oh, I found mommy. So that means isolate. You need to isolate within the isolation. So never forget your me time. In a work-life balance, your me time here, it's always important. Throughout the boredom, of course, is really around how to instill meaningful activities, but create a recipe that works for you. And of course, talking with your employer all the time so that, for some people, it's not going to work 9 to 5. It will be, I have my child here, but I do know that today from 5 to, let's say, 7 p.m., I can actually really work very well. Or let's say from 9 to 12, I can actually do this very well and maybe catching up on the Saturday. Work something that works for you, and of course, share it as well. And that's, I think, the optimal solution we are able to arrive with.
Okay, I think I have time for one more question. It's from, just scrolled up on me, hold 1 second. From Christina, from George Brown, one of our good friends. What are your suggestions to youth students who are about to become part of the workforce or waiting to start their co-op placement with respect to this current pandemic?
All right, so here we are talking our youth here. They're always welcome. Here's the thing. I think it's a wonderful time for our youth because we have to approach it with everyone's needs is going to be different. So we all come with our own set of needs, our own set of anxieties and so on. So it's really around, they're going to probably have their own concerns, but flexibility would be important to say, okay, well, this is the new reality right now. We are going to lead you throughout every step of the way. These are the steps. We are going to have regular communications going on. And while we're going through that, if you have any concerns, if you have any feedback, let us know. Otherwise, here are the demands, and these are the resources and support we are providing you. Does that work? If yes, great. If not, what are some of the tweaks that we can do so that we can best support you? We all in this together, really. So regardless of generation, regardless again of our title, we're all in this together. And it's really for us bringing up a lot of humanity. And sometimes we can also learn a lot from our youth as well. So it's actually such a great question that we have the co-op and students now coming. So congratulations from that. That's really exciting. Kudos to them and to you.
Excellent, excellent. So I think what we're going to do is move along with the program. I've got a couple more questions that have been put down. And what I'll do is we're going to have a little question Q&A at the end. So when we get Julian done his session as well. So thank you very much, Doctor. That's appreciated.
Thank you.
I'd like to now introduce Tracy Moradian, who is the Health and Safety Manager from Eastern Construction, to introduce our next speaker. Tracy.
Hi, everyone. I recognize quite a few of you on here. So it's my pleasure to introduce Julian Toy to you today. Julian is a human services counselor. He's trained in addictions and mental health. He's a substance abuse professional and a member of the Ontario Association of Mental Health Professionals. Julian also is an EA working full-time with students who have a wide variety of learning disabilities, including autism. So a little bit about Julian. You may not know, Julian is in active recovery. He drank alcohol and used drugs for 16 years from the age of 12 to 28. He's been in recovery from substance abuse since 2000, so kudos, Julian. Julian currently assists various industries with developing and customizing fit for duty, drug and alcohol policies and procedures, additionally provides supportive substance abuse awareness training, and also works with mental health training for supervisors and employees, including a case management. He's developed some modules in defensible document writing. He's our Eastern's preferred provider of fit for duty training. And he's provided a lot of our frontline, mid-level management, and senior management with the substance abuse awareness training modules and the defensible document writing. We've had a lot of great success with his training modules. It's been allowed us to better identify what we're dealing with in the field and to implement measures to offset that. So last month we worked with Julian to develop and deliver an employee-focused mental health self-awareness training module that he's titled Optimizing Mental Health During COVID-19. He delivered this to over 100 of our employees last week in advance of Safety Week. This training was highly important to us to help our employees retain their optimal health during these very uncertain, uncharted times. And we've received some really positive feedback from this training module and a lot of thank yous, because our employees really were thankful that we were thinking of their overall well-being, including their mental health during this time and the additional stressors that they have. What we're seeing from this training module is that we're experiencing greater engagement from our employees. It's really opened up the conversation about optimizing mental health and stressors that are occurring on. So it's been fantastic. So secondary to providing this training, and I think David will speak to it a little bit later, but this is aligned with our workplace wellness programs, and this will work to assist us in achieving the WSIB Excellence Program rebate later. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Julian.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I'm actually going to stop my video right now and go straight into my PowerPoint presentation. And then once I'm going to answer questions, I'm going to bring the video back so I can answer some questions. So we're talking about supporting employees during COVID-19. Basically, as was mentioned before, this is an absolutely unique situation requiring unique solutions. Most of the suggestions that I'm going to make are going to be modifying traditional boundaries between supervisors and employees. This could create some difficulty. Basically, everybody has to make sure they're doing what they're doing is approved and comfortable for them. If you don't feel comfortable, by all means, give me a call and I can help you with that. And by participating and viewing the training, you're basically agreeing to indemnify myself and my company against all lawsuits. We're going to talk about psychological, emotional, medical, and legal aspects of supporting employees, but obviously nothing of this is psychological, medical, or legal advice. If you have those concerns, please consult a psychiatrist, doctor, or lawyer. In order to support your employees, you have to feel confident, grounded, and comfortable yourself. You have to do that first. You can't support others if you're not okay. If you move forward without being okay, you may cause harm to yourself and your employee. Again, if you're not sure, you're feeling overwhelmed or uncomfortable, don't do this, follow the suggestion, please give me a call. A little bit about preparation for supporting others. When you're going to be making employee phone calls, make sure to have numbers to your local CAS, EAP, and/or local mental health providers, crisis lines and emergency services before you start to support employees. If there's an emergency situation, for instance, you have an employee with suicidal thoughts, indicate they're going to harm themselves or others, you need to have a contingency plan in place at the company level in order to provide guidance on what to do if there was an emergency. So make sure to prepare yourself well, just in the off chance that conversation goes into the realm of when you find information out that you need to take some action on. Opinions and advice. It's really important for supervisors not to offer opinions or give advice to employees about any personal, marital, mental health, or other problems, including addiction issues. It's outside your area of expertise and could put you and your company at risk. If an employee asks your opinion on any of these matters, simply decline to give your opinion and refer to the employee to the appropriate resources. If you have doubts about the correct response, don't do it and contact your management. Be clear on what you're qualified and able to do. As a supervisor, you can call the employee and let them know that you're thinking about them and their families. You can inquire as to how they're managing during COVID-19. You can give them resource numbers and contact information. You can provide them with information such as expected recall dates and site openings. You can listen empathetically to your employee for a short time. You can disclose that you're finding it difficult if you are during this crisis. I just wanted to say a few notes on this. It actually is beneficial to talk about you having difficulty during the crisis, provided you keep it very light and you're just basically sharing genuine experiences that you're having. It can be terrific. What you'd want to avoid is actually unloading like a lot of issues that you have onto an employee. I'm simply talking about disclosing that, yes, I'm finding it hard too, to get that relatedness piece with your employees. You can tell them about how your family is doing if you're comfortable and if asked. And then you can tell them positive things that you're doing to manage mental health. A word of caution here. There's nothing wrong with me sharing with someone what I'm doing to manage my mental health. For instance, if I enjoy having a bath or lighting candles, there's nothing wrong with me sharing that. But it's important for you not to suggest that to an employee. It's okay if you share your personal experience about what's working for you in a positive way, but please be mindful to not suggest it. If they say, should I do this or should I do that? Simply knock the ball back into their court and say, it's up to you. It's whatever you feel comfortable with. Be mindful of that. Employee support. You can call employees who are laid off to check how they're doing. You can ask an employee's partner or spouse how they're doing during the lockdown if the employee is unavailable. You can ask how the employee is managing with their children at home. You can disclose the best hours to shop at certain store locations based on your experience. And make sure to defensively document the calls. You don't have to put much information in except the name of the employee that you called and in general what you talked about. If you shared that you're finding it difficult, you could add that. You could also add if you shared, if you talked about things that were positive for your mental health during the pandemic, you can just jot those down, just so you have a little bit of documentation on the actual phone call and what you guys were talking about. Things to avoid. There's certain things that you shouldn't be doing. Providing counseling to the employee. I would suggest not engaging in lengthy phone calls. In terms of supporting employees, I think between 5 and 10 minutes is ideal. The very act of reaching out and talking to the employee for 5 or 10 minutes is kind of going a little bit beyond those traditional boundaries between supervisor and employee, can really create a feeling of relatedness and connection between both you and the employee and the company and the employee as well. So I would suggest about 5 to 10 minutes per call would be ideal for supportive calls. Advice and opinions. Definitely steer clear of advice and opinions. Supply proper numbers and/or resources. And then I wouldn't suggest any course of action that you're not qualified to. For instance, if you're the employee supervisor, you can certainly suggest that they show up to a job site that's opening tomorrow. You can suggest that they collect personal protective equipment from a certain location before they go. Anything within your area of expertise is fine. Just when you're moving beyond traditional supervisor-employee boundaries, it can get a little murky. And the reason that I'm putting these things on and making them very plain is because the temptation might be to suggest something that you're not really supposed to suggest. So I would stick to all of your traditional supervisor roles in terms of suggesting courses of action. You just don't want to go much beyond, you don't really want to go beyond that in terms of safety for yourself and the company. And then don't give your opinion on any mental health issue, even if asked. It can be tempting, especially if you have a little bit of rapport with the employee, to say, and they say, well, what do you think about this? Simply say, listen, I really can't speak to that. And if they are interested, you can certainly offer some numbers and some resources for that employee. Or you could even suggest that you'll contact your supervisor and get back to the employee on the question that they have. Talking about sympathy and empathy. Listening with empathy is really important. Sympathy has the tendency it can be misunderstood as pity. Oh, you poor thing, that's so bad. Oh my God, that's terrible. The problem is that can actually take away an employee's or undermine an employee's power to change and could harm their morale, get them upset or depress them. Empathy basically shows relatedness, where you're actually, you're on that same playing field going, yeah, that really sucks. I understand why that would frustrate you. If you can relate to an employee on that level, that can actually be extremely beneficial to an employee's mental health, because it actually makes them feel understood, and it can create a sense of connection between the supervisor and the employee, and by extension, the company and the employee. Talking about some listening skills. When you've asked an employee a question, wait and give the employee a chance to answer. Some people do take longer to respond than others, and it can feel a little unnatural sometimes after you've asked a question to sit there and wait for someone to respond. But again, everybody has their own way that they respond to questions, and it's okay to take even 15, 20 seconds to wait for a response. It really does depend on the individual and their personality type. And the act of listening is probably one of the most important things that you can do right now to help your employees. You don't have to have solutions to problems that they have. The very act that you care enough to listen to their problems is actually helping their mental health immediately. Often the problem, you may not have solutions or easy answers to some of the things that they're sharing, but the reality is most people actually have answers to their own problems. It's that act of listening empathetically that creates that mental health boost for your employee. as I mentioned, most of the time people do have the answers to their own problems. What most people don't have and crave is someone who can listen non-judgmentally. If you're able to do that even for 5 minutes, you can go a long way to supporting your employees' mental health. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is and how strong a positive effect it has. I can't help but think of that quote that that was said earlier about, you know, just that one moment can make a difference. Certainly, this is one of the things that can make a difference in that one moment. Talking about telling an employee certain things that are personal to you, like modifying those traditional supervisor boundaries, it actually makes them feel connected to the company. It makes you're being real, you're relating to them. That feeling of relatedness and the fact that you're being real can be terrific. And I would only suggest disclosing things to the employee after you're finished listening to them. Light, helpful things like the best places to times to shop, positive things that you're doing to manage during COVID. Again, keep the focus on your personal experience, and it's fine to share how it's affecting you. You can say, you know, I tried this and I really, you know, it made me feel good. But if they say, should I do that? Again, knock the ball back into their court and say, it's really up to you. I'm just talking about my personal experience. You can share a positive story that you've heard. You can talk about the frustration that you have over the containment measures. Again, just keep it light. It's not to dump a lot of your stuff on the employee. It's simply just to provide that measure of relatedness that we're all in this together that can be the benefit for the employee's mental health. Things to watch for: vicarious trauma. Basically, when you listen to people's problems, you can actually be traumatized by listening to someone's problems. So you just need to be mindful that when you're listening to employees' problems, that it doesn't cause more problems for you. If you find yourself obsessing over employees' problems or feeling overwhelmed with support duties, at that point, it's time to take a mental health break for yourself and discontinue supporting calls to employees until you're feeling confident and comfortable yourself again. For further information, I have an article on COVID-19, mental health and substance abuse, talking about the impact on the industry. It will be on the LOC website after the presentation. Certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. And I also have some services available, as Tracy mentioned. I do have the Optimizing Mental Health, sector-specific fit for duty training, defensible documentation, employee addiction awareness training, and policy development. All and everybody who's a member gets a 15% discount. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks very much, Julian. We have a number of questions from the field. And I did make a mention, for example, as it's being, this week is Health and Safety Week. It's also Mental Health Week. For example, I booked in Julian for Thursday for a session with my staff, similar to what Tracy did for Eastern. And what we're going to do is have everybody just have a conversation with Julian about coping with mental health in this sort of COVID environment. So it's got some questions here from Jennifer Beckers. Would it be best to have a script when contacting employees?
Perhaps at first, I think in order to, you can certainly have a short introductory sentence as a script, but the reality is, in order to be effective, it really does have to be a little bit spontaneous. The script could end with, "So how are you doing?" and then give the employee a chance to respond. So certainly you can make a little script for an introductory sentence, but the end of that script should say, "How are you doing?" to give that open-ended question at the end so the employee can respond. The answer is yes, but leave it open-ended.
Of course, you would take notes no matter what to make sure that you didn't go sideways and someone said, he said, she said type of thing later?
Right. Just be, and mindful just to be documenting. I mean, if it's just a fluffy phone call where you're talking, the employee shared, yes, I'm finding it difficult. There's not much to write down. The only time you'd have to, if there was something that kind of went sideways, like you mentioned, Craig, that's at that point, that's when you'd really want to start to be mindful with your documentation.
On a related question that sort of segues right in, if you suspect an employee is struggling, what's the best way to open up a conversation to better gauge this?
I would simply say, it sounds like you're having a difficult time. Did you want to talk about it? Like, just ask them, like, tell them what you're observing. If the employee's hesitant, if they're stressed out, if they're getting off the phone with you and going, shut up, you can see them getting angry. At that point, you could say, it sounds like you're really stressed out. Do you want to talk about that for a minute? And then that will give you a little bit more information for you to follow up on. It would also indicate the kind of resources that you might be able to marshal for the employee as well, depending on their response to that question.
Right. Okay. How to manage diversity of reactions from office workers once they've been asked to come back to work, even having a schedule, have just a number of workers of time instead of all staff. So, obviously you're bringing it back in bits and pieces.
And the question is how to manage the diversity.
Yeah, how do you get the different reactions from people once they're asked to come back, and they have a number of workers at all the same time instead of all staff. So I'll say to you, you and you come back, but not you and you.
Oh, so they'd be upset that they weren't called back.
Correct, because if the guidelines that come out on Friday, for example, that Premier Ford announced, some sites are coming back, but not all sites. Okay. So now, as a construction industry, we're engaging them bit by bit. And so there's a bit of disconnect where it's saying, how come they're getting it, not me? The old kids thing. It's not fair. How come they have?
Okay, so the best way that I would handle that, Craig, is open communication with the employee and be real with them why they're not being called back. If it's site specific and that employee's on a specific site, for instance, say they have a specific set of skills that are only useful on that site, I would just be real with them and say, hey, listen, we actually don't need more than 5 welders at the site we have now, and you're specialized in doing this particular job for us at that site. If you can provide information as to why that's happening, that would go a long way toward lessening that angry reaction. So in order to reduce anger, give information if possible.
Sure. And just switching it just for a second, because it was tied into something Kathy said as well, which was about sharing information, make it true and realistic, show that there is a measure of control. Kathy, is there anything you wanted to sort of maybe add to that?
I do agree with what has been mentioned. Certainly, again, making sure that the communication is open and clearly transparent. And again, as I had mentioned before, very much kind of authentic. Then the more authentic, then of course the trust really comes in. And as Julian really mentioned as well, it helps to minimize any feelings of anger. These are very delicate situations. For everyone is going to be very different. There is no standardized recipe. When we are able to listen, and as Julian mentioned, the right kind of empathy we are able to show, and just very much of being honest, but at the same time, when we are being honest in terms of, is also entails about, okay, how can I also again help you as well? Then we are able to problem solve together.
Right. Okay. Julian, one of the questions, if I had an employee call and I don't get an answer, what do I do? So you've asked them to reach out, but now I don't get a response.
One really effective thing that you can do is actually leave a message. And I'm going to relate a little personal experience I had with that. So I'm actually a member of the YMCA, and they discontinued my payments during COVID. Obviously, I can't go to the gym, but there's been 3 times now where they've left voicemail messages on my phone saying, hey, Julian, it's the YMCA calling just to let you know that we care about you. We've got some resources. The act of leaving a message for that employee, even not talking with them directly, makes it very clear to them that the company cares. And if you can get that message, you can get that message across on a voicemail or an answering machine. So that would be a terrific way to do it. Just leave a heartfelt message that you're thinking about them, and that would be a great way to boost their mental health.
Okay. You know, we found out recently that more and more sites have come back on, the job sites are reopening. How can we continue to support employees while they're at work?
One of the things that I'd suggest is having some resources available on the job site for employees to take. You know, if you had a pamphlet or some kind of printed booklet with suggestions to help mental health, you could have that. You could have like a box of printouts at the beginning of a job site or at the end, however you guys want to manage it. But if you had that resource available, like in hard copy for the employee to take, obviously following all the COVID stuff, the measures, that would be one way to do it. And kind of help your employees actually on the job site. Make those resources available on the job site for your employees.
Right, for sure, for sure. And you know, when you're documenting things, you know, we're doing it for multiple reasons, I think. But what's your advice on when you document stuff? Is it just for the file, or is it just so you can do a follow-up? What's the rationale?
Documentation, in my experience, when I do documentation, I'm doing it to protect myself and my company, actually. So I mean, date, time, employee name, employee number, and it just has to be a brief overview of what you talked about. You don't have to record everything that's said. You just have to acknowledge that you called an employee on a certain date and briefly what you discussed. It doesn't need to be exhaustive, Craig. It just needs to be contemporaneous with the phone call. It should be done shortly after you've done the phone call.
Okay, and I got an open question for, I'm not sure who can answer it, but maybe, do you guys know of any safe technology awareness and advice to staff and family members that have EHS or electro hypersensitive to various wireless frequencies and energy fields from wireless devices such as smartphone, sitting close to a router, cell phone, etc.?
I'd let Dr. Kumar take this question, I think.
Thank you so much. And I was actually myself going to go ahead answering this question. I barely understood the question, let alone myself knowing the answer to this very Einstein-y question. So please have the answer, and I need myself to be educated on that.
Okay, if we find anything, so as I mentioned before, what we're going to do, oh, there he goes. And as EMF, our radio frequencies affect the mental health of individuals, was the follow-up to that. So does that help?
I actually, I have no information and really not much background on that. So unfortunately, I can't really speak to that.
Okay, no worries.
So sorry, what I will do is definitely consulting with, because every field will have its own specific apps and ways of communication. So for example, in healthcare field, to provide telemedicine and the care, we have our own technology, virtual therapy and telemedicine. And I know other organizations is going to be very different. And as you can see, that's probably reality TV here with an active COVID when you have to take care of a child at the same time.
Well, we all have, that's right. We're all balancing all sorts of life challenges, right? And we know your little guys there off to the side, so it's good. So it's great to happen. By the way, she did warn us it might happen, so it's all good. But you know what, we said a couple things. Well, anybody with questions, just send them in. I'm going to do a couple more little pieces to sort of wrap it up. We said we'd be done by 4:15, and I like to get all meetings done on time. So what I'd like to say is a couple things. One is the League of Champions is reinventing itself a bit. You know, we used to go to a lot more events. We're supporting workers. We have a number of members. We have about 65 members and about 25 patrons. And we have more. And if you're not a member of League of Champions, you should examine it. It's certainly available on the website, League of Champions. Just Google it and you can get there. But what we're doing is more informational topics. We thought, you know what, while we're out there, we thought to utilize Zoom. A lot of people are at home, some people are working or working from home. and we thought we'd do different topics. This was one today we thought was appropriate, given that it was Mental Health Week and Safety and Health Week. But in addition to that, so next week, we have another session coming up on May the 14th. So it's a little bit 10 days from now, and it's called Reopening the Construction Industry. And we've got a number of different talks going to happen. We've brought Ron Kluski, the Chief Prevention Officer of Ontario, has agreed to come and give us an update on the guidelines and the programs and best practices. We've also asked them to field questions. So I called it open mic, but we'll see what happens, whether we unmute everybody or not. But most certainly, we can certainly get some questions answered directly from Ron and all the efforts that the CPO's office and the Ministry of Labor have done. And then I'm going to do a little talk on reopening and physical distancing and things about protocol. We've been involved with the ministry and with safety associations to try and get a proper, easy, doable, and safe methodology for working in close quarters. And something that's we can talk about that. And we've got Stephen Alga from ACON, who's going to be doing screening techniques for workers and making sure that, and then contract tracing, so that you can actually, once they're in the door, and if something does happen, you can trace them where all the movements are. And so there's going to be some good topics. We're also looking for more topics. If you have some, by all means, send them through. Marjorie's the good contact to be sending them to, and we'll certainly look at them and try and incorporate them in an upcoming. And the intent would be that year long, we're going to be doing some webinars. This is our second, so we still have a few technical things we're working on, but it's coming along so fine. Let me just look up and see if there's any more questions. No? Okay. Anything else to add, speakers? Final comments, closing?
Thanks for the opportunity to come on, Craig. I appreciate that.
I wanted to say the same thing. It was a delight, so much fun, and very informative. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much to all for your wonderful work.
So with mental health, it's a stigma we're all kind of come over. It's one of those things that you say, I don't need to talk about mental health because there's nothing wrong with me, but we always don't know what's wrong, and it could be an undiagnosed issue. And it's something we all need to be aware of. I think there's been a great campaign that's been sponsored by Bell, Let's Talk. It's been ongoing for a number of years. That's bringing it to the forefront. And I know, having been involved in a number of building of mental health facilities, it's kind of important to give back and sort of grow it as far as a topic that we can all openly talk about. And so I'll thank you very much for joining, and look forward to more webinars. And we'll see you all later. Stay safe.
Take care.
Thanks.